go over to the NFC now. The NFC East, I got to go to the Eagles. Yeah, I'm a diehard Eagles fan. You'll never hear me pick a team that isn't named the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's going to be close. And the NFC East is, I think, going to be close for quite a few years because both the Cowboys and the Eagles are set up to play well. But I think the Eagles, they attack their position of need. Although people kind of mocked them for the Rager pick and all that, it came out after the draft that, hey, we need to get faster. At the end of the season, Howie Roseman went to Doug Peterson and said, we have to get faster. And I think while the Jalen Reagor pick, I think, will turn out, the other two wide receivers they took in the draft, John Hightower, Quez Watkins, they would not have been 5th and 6th round picks in normal draft classes. This draft class was so wide receiver heavy that you had some guys that jumped above them in the board but just didn't fit what the Eagles wanted as a wide receiver. Perfect example would be a guy like Golden Gandy out of Liberty who went to Washington. While he was a big threat that you'd think maybe the Eagles would go for in later years, they wanted speed. And they got 3 guys that have blazing track star speed. I think it's one of the things I am going to miss about no preseason this year is I wanted to see those guys get on the field for extended periods of time and really see how they would turn out. You know, really just track meet everybody running down the field. But with Deshaun Jackson, if he can stay healthy, it'll be really interesting to see. The other thing is the Eagles are going to need a guy like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to step up. Arcega-Whiteside really looked like the absolute opposite of the player he was at Stanford. It came out at the end of the year that he was dealing with a foot injury, which makes sense because you have a guy who's this great route runner out of college that all of a sudden in the pros can't get any separation. And that's a problem. But from all we've heard is he's supposed to take a next step and get better and develop more, and that would be great. But I think the speed on the offense as well as the budding superstar of Miles Sanders can really make a difference. You also add guys like Darius Slay and Will Parks and I can't think of his name. It's the corner, the nickel corner. I can't remember his name. It's whatever. Whoever they added, it's going to be in the description below. I'm going to have the edit. But you're going to add all these guys on the back end of the defense that they desperately needed because it was a clear issue that they had for years was that secondary was terrible. And I think it will put them over the edge. The other thing with the Eagles is always going to be health. Since even the Super Bowl season, but since the Super Bowl season, everybody's just going down with injuries. Year after year after year, guys are getting injured. You technically still have Brandon Brooks down with an injury, although that dude is a freak who's going to try to play after he tore his Achilles like a month and a half ago. He's still going to try to play this season. Dude's an absolute psychopath. More credit to him. But I think the Eagles do take first place. I think they end probably about 11-5. Maybe 12-4 if they get really lucky, but probably 11-5. Number 2 is going to be Dallas. That offense is going to be really good. But, and there's a big but, because they got a fat guy as their head coach. Mike McCarthy. Only ESPN could hype up Mike McCarthy after 2 years of destroying Mike McCarthy. Here's my problem with Mike McCarthy. Is he a good coach? Yeah, he's a good coach. Did he have Aaron Rodgers for like 10 years and win 1 Super Bowl with him? Yeah. Yeah, he had Aaron Rodgers for 10 years and went to 1 Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. How do you do that? There were years where the NFC was terrible and they had nothing going for them. I think the biggest issue the Cowboys are going to have this year, actually I think there's 2. One is you let Byron Jones go, which is fine. They weren't going to pay him what Miami paid him, and that's fine. I totally understand that. The issue that I now have is, while CeeDee Lamb is an absolute freak, and I really wanted the Eagles to draft him, and I was very upset that Dallas drafted him, that wasn't a position of need. So the idea of like, oh, the Cowboys offense. Well, the Cowboys offense had 4,000 yards, had like over 4,000 yards passing last year. They didn't need another wide receiver. They needed to shore up that secondary. So, and then with the retiring of Travis Frederick, that one makes it even harder. So it's weird because I think Dallas is going to be good, but you lose a top offensive lineman. You drafted a great wide receiver, a great college wide receiver at least, but you didn't need one. Your defense is still good by all stretch. You still have a pretty good defense, but I really do think Mike McCarthy and his lack of running the ball is going to be the story that you see out of Dallas. I think his lack of running the ball is going to piss Zeke off, and that's just going to tank that season, as well as Dak playing without a contract. That's the other thing that it's a big storyline is Dak Prescott's playing with the franchise tag. We've seen this go both ways in the NFL. Sometimes guys come out, they play great with the franchise tag, and they get a contract. But more times than not, we see them either have down years or we see them get injured like week 2. And then I guess Andy Dalton will come in and the Red Rifle will be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. But I think Dallas is still going to be a good team this year. I think that offense is going to be next level. But it's Dallas. They'll find a way to blow it in the end anyway, because they always do. Number 3 might be a little shocking is the Washington football team, the artist formerly known as the Redskins. And it's funny, with all the turmoil going on around Washington, with everything going on around Washington, one constant is gonna show itself, and that's they have a really good coach in Ron Rivera, and I think they needed that. That's the one thing Washington did not mess up this year is they got a solid head coach that they needed at this time of their like at this point in their franchise, because everything else is going wrong for that team. But you have a guy who's going to bring you a solid base. Your team is going to have a solid base under it, and you need that. You absolutely need that in your team. So they're going to have some issues as well. Full disclosure, I've never been a Dwayne Haskins believer. I think he's a slightly better Jamarcus Russell. Not really athletic. He's got a big arm, but he's not really accurate and really relies on that big arm a little too much. There was reports that Ron Rivera might not be sold on Dwayne Haskins. Alex Smith is coming back, although I don't think he's playing. Kyle Allen came into Washington. I don't think he's playing either. But I don't know if Dwayne Haskins maybe feels a little bit of pressure. It's only his second year, but maybe feels a little pressure. Maybe feels like, oh, wait, everybody that drafted me is gone. It's an entire new regime. It's almost an entirely new team at this point. So everyone that brought me in here is gone. You don't have that safety net that other people's jobs are tied to you. So, but I think their defense is going to be good. I think Chase Young is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think they have a very good head coach, and I think that very good head coach is what separates them and the New York Football Giants, who come in number 4. I think the Giants made, obviously this is before we've seen anything on the field, I think the Giants made the worst head coaching hire of the offseason. Joe Judge, I don't get it. I don't understand. Bill Belichick disciples have never been a great hire. I think Bill O'Brien might be the best Bill Belichick disciple that became a head coach. I think he's got the best overall record. Joe Judge, the only thing he got up for was the Mississippi State job. And I don't even know if he was going to get that. I don't see it. I don't. I think Joe Judge he reminds me a lot of Matt Patricia, where he comes out and he's just like, it was earlier in the offseason, they asked about certain players, they asked him about Saquon Barkley, and he had some response of like, everybody's got to earn a spot on this team. And it's like, pump the brakes there, bud. Like, I get the whole, like, no, we need everybody, all hands on deck, and that's fine, but it's Saquon. He doesn't have to earn a spot on this team. You're not cutting him. Shut up. Sing his praises because he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. Stop it. So, he reminds me of Matt Patricia. I don't think the Giants are going to have enough. Their defense still isn't going to be good. Their offense still isn't really that good. They at least they went O-line this year finally to the rejoice of Giants fans as they finally drafted an offensive lineman. So good for you guys to try to shore up that O-line and maybe save Daniel Jones a little bit. And Daniel Jones had a pretty good season last year. Had a lot of fumbles, but he had a pretty decent season last year. I just think they're going to struggle. They're going to end like 5-11 again. I think the Redskins might end like 6-10, but they're going to be close. But I would give the nod to Washington. The NFC North, it's going to be the Packers. I mean, I know a lot of people are looking at the Packers this year. By the way, shout out to Tom Grossi, dude's biggest Packers fan I've ever seen on YouTube, and credit to him because his reaction to drafting Jordan Love in the first round was similar to my reaction when the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. Whatever. The Packers had a rough draft this year. and everybody's panicking now. What's the future hold? And nobody knows the future hold for the Packers. However, what we know now is this team was one game away from the NFC Championship game. I don't think they did enough to become better. The 49ers ran the ball down their throat, and the Packers had no answer, and I don't think they got better in that aspect to have an answer for it. And the receiving core is still sketchy, but they're a better team. They're a better team than the rest of the division. They still have Rodgers. LaFleur's offense was okay last year. I think it doesn't work to Rodgers' strength, but it still worked. Aaron Jones is still a good running back, although he's on a contract year, and I don't know if he comes back either. Devontae Adams is still one of the best receivers in football. So we'll see. But I think the Packers still run the NFC North, and I think it's partially because while the Packers had a bad draft, the rest of the teams in the NFC North really didn't get better. Which brings me on to the Minnesota Vikings. Losing Stephon Diggs, granted you got a first-round pick, you got Justin Jefferson, he was really good, but Justin Jefferson's not Stephon Diggs. Justin Jefferson, who I liked coming out of college, by the way, originally wanted the Eagles to draft him, but more looking into him, realized he is only a slot receiver. He only plays the slot. And that's big, because I think Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen were one of the best 1-2 punches of guys that needed each other to really succeed. I think they're both good wide receivers separate, really good wide receivers together. And I don't think that Justin Jefferson is going to be that receiver. I think he's going to be steady. He's got good hands. Probably going to end up with like 600 yards receiving this year. So I think he'll be good. But I don't think you're losing Stephon Diggs. You have Dalvin Cook's contract drama now. You still have Kirk Cousins, so any primetime game you know you're going to lose. I don't think the Vikings, a team that missed the playoffs last year, they didn't get better to then make the playoffs this upcoming year. They got worse in reality. I mean, Stephon Diggs, you lose him, but you do bring in Justin Jefferson, which is good, but Justin Jefferson is not Stephon Diggs. Justin Jefferson's not going to blow the top off the defense like Stephon Diggs did for you. So, we'll see. Number 3 is going to be the Lions. Don't get me wrong, while Matt Patricia doesn't end 4th place this year, they still will suck. They'll still end like 6-10. They're really not going to be a great team. Matt Patricia will still get fired. I think this is Matt Stafford's last year in Detroit. It's just going to be a weird team. I think Detroit is, if not going, let me put it this way. I think Detroit, if the Jaguars don't get the number 1 pick in the AFC, by the way, I never mentioned the Jaguars in the AFC South portion. They blow. That's me mentioning Jaguars. If the Lions don't have the first pick in the draft and the Jags don't have the first pick in the draft, I think the Lions will trade up to try to get Trevor Lawrence. That's what I think. I think they're going to make that move. But they're still a team that struggles. They have a really good offense. Stafford's a good quarterback, but I think for both of their sake, he's gonna be out. They're trying to build that defense up, but it's another one. You draft Okudah, great. You let Darius Slay walk, not great. You let an all-pro corner walk to draft a top corner. So it's like, oh, well, we got a top corner. Yeah, but you lost a top corner. And you got a top corner out of college. So we don't know yet. He hasn't proven anything in the NFL. So you got worse. I don't care what anybody says, even though a rookie's highly rated. The NFL players here, the rookie always starts down here. It could end up passing him, but it's not going to be his first year. He's not going to pass him. So, I don't think Patricia has that locker room. So, but I think the Lions are better because you have the Chicago Bears, and that is a team that is a mess. Matt Nagy hates Mitch Trubisky. It's super clear. Ryan Pace is just a horrible general manager. I think at this point they might as well cut Mitch Trubisky. And as crazy as it sounds, they should. And the main reason is because every time Bears fans look at him, they think, wow, we traded up 1 spot with the 49ers to get him over Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes. Ouch. They brought in Nick Foles to start, and as an Eagles fan, I can tell you, Nick Foles is not your savior. That's just not how it's going to work. He might give you a 3-game stretch, like he got to the Super Bowl, where he looks like a world beater, but in reality, Nick Foles is a consistently average quarterback, and that's about that. So I think the Bears are in the basement of the NFC North. I think Matt Nagy gets fired, gets a coach being an offensive coordinator somewhere under that Andy Reid tree somewhere. Maybe even Philadelphia, who doesn't have an offensive coordinator this year, gets that spot and then works his way back to a head coaching spot in a year or two. But maybe back to Kansas City because Eric Bellamy's going to get a job after this. But I think the Bears are going to be just awful. Maybe the Bears get the number 1 pick in the draft. Somebody's going to win that Trevor Lawrence sweepstake. NFC West, the San Fran's still going to hold the top spot. They're another team that they got really good. They had a really good draft. They didn't lose anybody. San Fran's biggest question is always going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. How far can he take them? I think there's a lot of heat that got put on him after the Super Bowl. Missed a lot of open passes in that Super Bowl that maybe would have turned the tides the other way for them. But they're another team that's similar to Tennessee where they just run the ball, defense holds, and who knows, maybe they go back to the Super Bowl and maybe Kyle Shanahan blows yet another Super Bowl. That'd be interesting. But I think it's an easy question. I think San Fran still holds the top spot in the NFC West. Number 2 is going to be a shocker. I'm going with Arizona. And I liked Arizona's draft. I think they attacked their defense a little bit more because they definitely needed to attack their defense a little bit more. But adding DeAndre Hopkins for a young Kyler Murray's offense, for a young Cliff Kingsbury's offense, is going to be really good. And in a time where you maybe don't have to have the best defense in football to win enough games. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to make the wild card. But I think they're going to be like an 8-8 team, a 9-7 team, somewhere in that middle of the road that just does not fully make it. But I think, without a doubt, Arizona's offense is just going to be excellent. They're another one, though, didn't address the offensive line issue, and their O-line was terrible last year. Kyler Murray was running for his life. It's another issue where Cliff Kingsbury's offense is the Mike Leach offense. A lot of quick passes, a lot of just fast offense, get the ball down the field, we're good. So maybe don't always just bury the offensive line, kind of just make it work. You only need 2 seconds to get the ball out. But that doesn't always work in the NFL. You don't always have your first option, your second option, or even your third option. Sometimes you got to extend the play. But I think Arizona's offense is going to be good enough to hold them. And I think the other reason why is because my bold prediction, Seattle's coming in 3rd in the NFC West. And not because they're going to just fall apart, because Russell Wilson's going to get injured. And this is how crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but look at Seattle. Statistically, Seattle is one of the worst teams in the NFL every year. Yet Russell Wilson just drags that lifeless team with them. They have not drafted well in the previous years. And Russell Wilson, again, just carries that team to that 10-6 range where they make the playoffs, but then the clearly superior teams beat them in the playoffs. I think Russell Wilson gets injured this year. I think that's another team that just never worked on their offensive line. Their offensive line is terrible. Their run game is not good. Their receivers aren't that good. Their defense is kind of falling off from what it once was. They still have guys like Bobby Wagner, but they're just not that great. Once Russell Wilson goes down, they are screwed. I don't even know who their backup quarterback is. I don't even think Pete Carroll knows who his backup quarterback is. I think Seattle comes in 3rd, which leaves the LA Rams in 4th. And here's my other bold prediction. The Rams come in 4th, and they fire Sean McVay. I think Sean McVay gets fired this year because Jared Goff is going to look terrible again. His contract is going to be an absolute albatross on that team because they way overpaid him. They are a team that really, drafting guys like Van Jefferson early in the draft this year also did not help them. Getting rid of Brandon Cooks for a draft pick is cool and all, but they're a team that doesn't have much draft capital, and even with the draft capital they don't really have, their cap is, they're up against the cap. For a while there, I was watching the Rams make trades with first-round picks and throw out contracts, and I'm like, do they just have endless first-round picks and money? And now it turns out, no. And it's showing itself. They sold the farm when moving to LA to try to build a fan base there. It didn't work. sold the farm and going to LA, and they are in for a rough road ahead. They, looking forward, don't have anything in the future. They are in trouble. And I think Sean McVay is going to struggle. His offense is going to struggle for the second straight year. I think it's also been figured out. And I think Sean McVay gets fired because I think the Rams, I don't think the Rams are a fourth place team this year. I think the Rams are bad this year. I think they are really bad. They're another team. Their old offensive line just got older and worse. And that's a problem because Jared Goff moves like a statue. So any pressure is putting an end to Jared Goff. And the running game doesn't really scare anybody. Their defense doesn't scare anybody. They're in trouble. The Rams are in trouble. Rams fans, I think they can see themselves in the writing on the wall. What a lot of people started telling the Rams a couple of years ago was, it's Super Bowl or bust. And they sold everything for 3 points in a Super Bowl. So we'll see. And finally is the NFC South. We got the new kids on the block, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coming out of nowhere, but they will not come in first place. It's going to continue to be the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are just too good. Talent-wise, their offense is just through the roof too good. I think they have one of the most underrated wide receiver signings this year as well in the offseason. So you're going to be looking at really an excellent offense going forward with Emmanuel Sanders now to complement Michael Thomas. I think when you look at the Saints now, they're another one. Can they get over their playoff? Can they get off the playoff schneid? I mean, every time you see them in the playoffs, they just struggle. The game against the Saints last year, or the Vikings last year showed it. I think that's why they went and got Emmanuel Sanders, is because they needed that second wide receiver to take the top off the defense. Because Michael Thomas does not do that. All he does is run slants. I have a really, really, really small YouTube channel, but I'm pretty sure Michael Thomas is going to comment on this video and curse me out and tell everybody that the world is against the New Orleans Saints. But they're still going to be talented. I think this is Drew Brees' last year at quarterback. I don't think Taysom Hill is their quarterback of the future. I don't care what Sean Payton says. He's not. They're going to be really good. They're still going to make the playoffs. They're still going to take the 1 seed. However, here comes the Buccaneers. I think this is going to be an NFC South with two teams that are going to end like 12-4, 11-5, 13-3, 12-4, something along those lines. Tampa Bay is going to be good. Their offense is going to be excellent. I think Tom Brady is going to, the ageless wonder is going to be even more ageless. Everybody thought he started to show his age last year. He goes into Tampa Bay. He's playing for Bruce Arians. He's a fun coach to play for. Tampa Bay wins. Their offense is exceptional. I don't think Gronk has the year everybody's thinking he does. And Tampa Bay's defense was kind of an unsung hero of last year's team. I mean, they really got better halfway through the season to the end of the year. The issue was Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions. That's a lot of interceptions. That's a lot of free possessions, and they still went 8-8. So I think the Bucs are going to be really good. They have a really good coach in Bruce Arians. I really do like Bruce Arians a lot. So I'm going to go with the Bucs as the 2 seed. Number 3 is the Falcons. Oh, Atlanta. Why is Dan Quinn still your head coach? After blowing the Super Bowl, the moment he then lost in the wild card round the following year, or the divisional round the following year, to the Eagles, and then just didn't make the playoffs the following year, and then didn't make the playoffs again, at what point did the Atlanta Falcons just look at themselves and go, we should fire our coach? They had a run late in the year last year, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. They weren't good. They played like crap. Their offense, they drafted a lot of offensive line. That's great. Their wide receivers are really good. Actually, no, their wide receivers are great. Between Julio and Calvin Ridley, they have an excellent receiving corps. Their running backs, And Matt Ryan's a good quarterback. I think he's aged. He's still good. He'll still win you games. But what it comes down to is Dan Quinn is not a great coach. And their defense is terrible. That defense is brutal. And there's nothing changing that. They had a defense with talent that just kept getting injured. Now you look at them, they're not gonna do anything different. I think now Atlanta will finally fire Dan Quinn at the end of this year, maybe halfway through this year. But this was another one that it'll be a move that's way too late and that they should have done years prior. And finally is going to be the Panthers. I like Matt Rule as head coach. I think this hire will work its way out in the end. But if you look at Matt Rule's time in college, he started at Temple. He went 2-10 his first year at Temple, then 6-6, then started to win. If you look at his time at Baylor, he went 2-10 his first year at Baylor, then went like 7-6, and then won. He builds. He does. He builds programs. He builds them from defense out to offense. He really needs guys that focus on his offensive side of the ball. I liked what they did in the draft, though, which was their defense was not good last year. It was terrible last year, and they lost Luke Kuechly. So what did the Panthers do? They spent every one, I believe it was 9, every one of their draft picks last year on a defensive player. That's awesome. That is amazing. That I love that because that is Matt Rule looking at that defense and going, they're bad. I need guys that fit my style of defense, and we're going to build it up from there. I really enjoyed that. I like that plan. They're another one. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater's the answer there. Teddy Bridgewater's a game manager. Christian McCaffrey's still going to be the superstar on the offense. The Robbie Anderson signing will help them, but their offense isn't going to be great. They're going to be like 6-10 this year, 5-11 again. But it's going to be a young defense that's trying to develop stars. It'll be Matt Rule trying to implement his style. And then I wouldn't be surprised the following year you start to see them draft a lot of offensive guys in this draft, just trying to kind of even it out, build your defense up with young talent and hope they succeed, and then build your offense up. And in 2 years start to look like teams like the Buffalo Bills, where their defense can carry them while their offense kind of catches on. And then in the NFC, I'd have 2 wild cards. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be the top wild card in the NFC. They're just offensively are just way too talented to not make the playoffs, and their defense is good. Their coaching is good. And it's really weird because I don't want to see Tom Brady win another Super Bowl, but I would like to see Bruce Arians win a Super Bowl. He is, without a doubt, my favorite, besides Doug Peterson, without a doubt, my favorite NFL head coach. That dude is just the man. Walks in, Kangol hats, doesn't give a shit. Super cool guy. I want that guy to win a Super Bowl. And then the second wildcard team is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. They're another one. Their offense is just way too good to not make the playoffs. I don't think Arizona is going to be good as the second place team, and I don't think the Vikings. I think the Vikings are going to be like 2 weeks away from the end of the season, like week 15. They'll fall out. But I think the Cowboys will take the second wildcard spot. Maybe the Eagles, but I definitely think whoever comes in second place in the NFC East is going to take it. I think both those teams are going to get 4 free wins against the Giants and the Redskins. So one of them is going to, and I think they'll split. So there's 5 wins right there. One of them is going to make it. I have the Eagles coming in first in the NFC, so I'm going to say Dallas comes in as a second wild card team, but I think they're going to be a good wild card team. Don't get me wrong. I think they're going to be at minimum 10-6. So I think the NFC wild card is going to be a lot better than the AFC wild card, and there's not going to be an easy out in the NFC.